Joe and Sandy Treeleg, Chris Boat, John and Ruth Mount, Harold and Charlotte Schechter, John and Jan Minton, Mrs. Bob Funk, Mrs. Joe Sparma, Mrs. Jack Gibbs, and Mrs. Marge Stroll. These are Woody's guests for the evening. Earl's coaching staff is here. We'd like to have you meet them. If I can get them on their feet, please, if you'll hold your applause. Bill and Debbie Conley, Steve Devine, Randy and Linda Hart, Chuck and Debbie Heater. I'm having trouble getting them on their feet, I guess. Bob and Teresa Palcic. It's been a great evening. A number of Woody's former coaches are here, and if I could get them on their feet, please, so that you can all greet them. George Hill, Ralph Staub, George Chump, Mickey Jackson, Dave Adolph, Bill Gunlock, Gene Feckety, Frank Elwood, John Mummy, Chuck Clausen, Gene Slaughter, Larry Catuzzi, and Bill Miles. Thank you. There are four gentlemen, three of whom are with us tonight, who are very important in the history of Ohio State football. Our Heisman Trophy winners, Vic Janowitz, Hop Cassidy, and Arch Griffin. Will you stand, please?
But I am delighted and pleased to participate in this evening's festivities, honoring Coach Woody Hayes and head coach Earl Bruce, and most importantly, the continuing tradition of excellence at the Ohio State University. Woody Hayes is a man who is dedicated to the pursuit and achievement of excellence. And just as important, in fact more important, dedicated to this university. His wide-ranging interests and his commitment to a broad and continuing education are an inspiration to all of us. Well, his accomplishments as a coach are well known. But just as important, even more important, are his continuing accomplishments as a teacher and an educator.
Has solicited mostly major donors for major gifts towards the $45 million goal. But with the establishment of the Woody Hayes Fund, we are now in a position to reach out at a grassroots level and solicit everyone who has an interest in Ohio State University and who, of course, admires and respects Woody Hayes. What greater rallying point could we have at Ohio State than Coach Hayes? And I can promise you that many will come forward from this night on to pay tribute to Coach Hayes, and of course the university in the final analysis will honor Coach Hayes in appropriate manner down the line. So, Coach Hayes, I want to thank you for helping us in this campaign. But we're up here tonight to honor two great coaches. In fact, these two men have accounted for 280 Ohio State victories in their careers, almost half of the Ohio State total. Together, they have won 17 Big Ten championships or co-championships, and they have won 10 of Ohio State's 11 bowl game victories. And of course, Woody Hayes has 3 national undisputed football champions. But perhaps even more phenomenal than Coach Hayes' won and lost record is his longevity. You talk about guts and staying power and tenacity. Woody Hayes survived 28 consecutive one-year contracts at Ohio State University. Now, I've never really appreciated that before, but But now I really can't believe it. Hell, I've been here less than 3 years, and I am totally exhausted.
Please, Earl and Woody, that you're part of our university. The honesty, the ethics, the success that you have brought intense, and he espouses the work ethic. He has, above all, integrity. To be a successful coach, one must care about students, must respect family and community, and must probably have strong family and community ties personally. These Woody certainly has. If that description sounds familiar, it is intentional. In this case, student and teacher have innately similar characteristics, which were reinforced by their personal relationships. That, my friends, is what has produced a generation of great football by a coach and by his students. They are committed and they have integrity. Therefore, they have developed a distinguished program to be emulated by all of us at the Ohio State University.
When we were the national champions. It's been a number of universities. Most recently served Iowa State University for 12 years as their director of athletics. Is presently the commissioner of the Trans-America Athletic Conference. A gentleman who has worked for Woody and hired Earl, Lou McCullough.
Thank you, Jim. President Jennings, Coach Bruce, Coach Hayes, President of Ohio State University. I spent 36 years here at this great university. I want you to know Esco Sarkton said we got 4 for every year we worked for Woody. After I got up in my 60s, I think he missed it 5 or 6 years. But starting really 39 years in college athletics, I feel privileged to be up here with great coaches like Bo Schembechler, Lou Holtz, Earl Bruce, Bill Mallory. They're the best in the country. They are the best. There's nothing. I could tell you a lot of stories tonight, but they gave us only 3 minutes. I think some people can't tell time, so I'm gonna try to hurry this along in just 3 minutes. But I toured the campus today, and I went out and I saw the North facility. And as you come back year after year, you see things and people, they remind you of different stories. And Coach, I remember when I came in at the North facility and I was making a talk on defense, we only had one room, and we had that big petition. Remember that? I guess you should. Anyhow, so I'm lecturing, I'm really fired up on defense, and I have to kind of give them hell a little bit. And Coach Hayes came and pulled the petition back nice like. He says, come here. He says, Coach McCullough, you're talking entirely with too much enthusiasm, and you're loud. I said, hell, you're not quiet over there yourself. Well, I thought I could get by with that, so the next afternoon at 2 o'clock I came out to practice, and I saw all of this bundle of petitions, $3,000 worth, out in the hall. Well, I went in, and I always liked Coach Hayes. He had on that little hat down there, and he's sitting down there, and he looks up, and I said, Coach, what happened to the petition? He said, anybody can see it's out in the hall. He said, by the way, I've got this entire room now for offense. You better find you a place. And I want you to know I went to the boiler room. You remember that? That's the only place I had was 2 damn boilers down there. Well, we could hit in the boiler room just as well as any place, I guess. Then I look at Coach Mallory down here. I remember when he came on our staff, our defense used to meet separately from Coach Hayes, and one night, I always went about 10 or 10:30 along in there, and if I stayed till 12 o'clock, Coach Hayes would stay 5 minutes more. If I stayed till 3 o'clock in the morning, he'd stay till 3:05. So I decided it was time to go home, and I stopped by and said, Coach Hayes, our defensive staff's leaving now. It might rain, but we don't have to do anything with the tarp. We know we're not going to put the tarp on the north facility tonight. Okay, now we're leaving. Yep, okay. So I get home, put on my pajamas, and about 11 o'clock the phone rings. This is typical. All you coaches out there that work for him, you know how this is. I said, hello. This is Woody, Lou. Hell, I knew who it was. No one else. So he said, come down to the north facility. It's raining. Well, I knew that too. He said, we're going to put the tarp down. I said, I gave you a chance to take our defense while ago. He said, get out here. So I had my pajamas on, put on my tennis shoes, went down to the north facility. If you'll remember, Tiger Ellison had on a new sport coat. Larry Catuzzi sitting back there had on a new pair of shoes. We're putting that tarp down that's raining like hell. Oh gosh, it's coming down. Tiger's coat comes up to here and Larry loves his shoes. He says, I'm not paid enough to work here. And Mallory was a classic. He said, this is a high state, and Hugh Hyman turned to him and he said, welcome to the big time, Bill. But discipline is the thing I remember about Coach Hayes more than anything. I remember he told Ralph Droshy, all of you remember Ralph, he said, Ralph, I want you to water this practice field at 2 o'clock. I mean, at 2 o'clock, you got that, Ralph? Ralph said, yes, sir. Well, I went out there at 2 o'clock and he made me oversee it and make sure that Ralph was doing it. So Coach Hayes had really great discipline. Can you imagine 20 people with these big raincoats on and those big hats? It's raining about an inch every 5 minutes, and there's 20 of them out there watering that thing on the field. Coach Hayes said do it. Oh, gosh. Then we won the national championship in 1968, and I remember Lou Holtz for this one. Coach Hayes calls a meeting at 8 o'clock the next morning. We thought, well, he's really going to be happy. We won a national championship. Well, he kind of maneuvered our rear end over a little bit and chewed us out to get us back down to earth. I thought it was too long to celebrate. And, he said, Coach McCullough said, I want you to take this staff back now. You got to get back and start recruiting. I'm going to Vietnam. Well, I had to tell him this, and all morning will remember this. I said, Coach, I'm not going to take our staff back to Columbus. I said, we have the National Coaches Convention out here 3 days. So what are you going to do? I said, I'm going to take them to Las Vegas. Oh, gosh. I didn't know what he would say, but evidently he was in a pretty good mood. He said, all right, but you better get back just as soon as that's over with and get on recruiting. Well, Coach Hayes, I want you to know it's 20 years later, and Coach Mallory and Earl Bruce and Lou Holtz and myself, we had a hell of a good time. Earl Bruce was our coach at Iowa State and did an excellent job for us. Now, if you can picture Northwestern beating Ohio State and Michigan back-to-back for 2 straight years, that is really what he accomplished. He went 8-3, 8-3, and 8-3 at Iowa State and beat Nebraska back-to-back. And I really liked Earl for that. Made my job a lot easier. But he's an outstanding coach. They've given you his record here. And I'm really happy that he's here to carry on the great tradition started by Coach Hayes and the other Ohio State people and coaches before him. I really enjoy coming back and visiting your great campus. And I treasure and always will cherish the years that I worked for Coach Hayes. He is a great American, a super person, and I hope they name the new facility after him. I hope they name the English department after him and the history department. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lou. Our next speaker has won championships at every college where he's been the head coach, Miami, Colorado, and Northern Illinois. He also was a member of the 1968 National Championship staff. He's an Ohio native, a Miami grad. Mallory teams reflect hard work, discipline, dedication, and an overwhelming desire to succeed. Coaching to Bill Mallory is like raising a family. You've got to be involved to be effective, and he sure is involved. Head coach at Indiana University, Bill Mallory.
Thank you very much. A real pleasure, a real thrill for me to have the opportunity to come back and share this evening. Of course, recognize a great institution, Ohio State. To salute Earl, a tremendous job that he's doing. Of course, I can go back a long time with Earl, back when he was coaching at Salem High School and I was at East Palestine High School. We were to play each other, but Earl dropped the game for whatever reason. And wouldn't play with him. And we had a good team, but we became good friends as the years went on. He went on to Sandusky, coached my high school, Sandusky, and went on to Massillon, and then we were together here at Ohio State and on the same staff, became even closer friends, and I look at him as certainly a great friend and a great coach. Of course, also, too, I've never quite trusted him. I'll quite be honest with you there. I used to jog every day, and not every day, but often more than he did anyway. In the country, and I mean that with all sincerity, and when you're on the other side, you have to go get him. I assure you, you know what kind of coach he is. He's even come a long way in his dress. Only thing I want to ask you, you'll wear that clown hat when I come to town, I'll get you balloons. And of course, to pay great tribute to a great person, a great coach, Woody. You know, it was a goal of mine, a dream to have the opportunity to come to Ohio State and maybe someday coach. And I'll tell you, when he called me, I was one excited individual. I owe the man a great deal. He's done an awful lot for me. I learned a great deal from him. Of course, when I came in that first year, we had a tough season. We had a losing year. And I wasn't sure I'd stopped off at the right place. But we did struggle that first year. We stuck together as a staff and a team and got things better. And I learned a lot from that year and how to deal with adversity. And no one knows how to deal better with adversity than Woody. And being at IU, I've encountered a couple of tough years there. I guarantee you, don't ever get dissatisfied with 9 victories. I'd love to have them 9 years. Okay, if I ever got 9 there, you may see my tail end up for governor. But that 1968 team was a great year. And I see some of the players here tonight, Bill Long, Leo Hayden, Jim Stillwagon. I had the good fortunes to be able to coach Jim. You didn't have to do a whole lot with Jim. That son of a gun was wired up. He knew how to get out and play football. He almost, McCullough got him almost as a linebacker, but thank God Woody allowed me to have him as a nose guard. Made me a little better coach. But in 1968, of course, we won that Big Ten championship, went to the Rose Bowl, beat OJ, national champs. And a great, great year. And I can go back to that preseason, too, and I have a memory back then, too, in that preseason. My wife, Ellie, told me that she was pregnant and we were expecting our 4th child. Of course, I was quite elated over this and excited, and after practice, I pulled Woody aside and I said, Woody, I got great news. Ellie's expecting, and this is going to be our 4th. And Woody says, Bill, that's nice. I said, well, you know, Woody, I said, anywhere I've been, when we've had a child, we've won the conference championship. He says, is that right? I said, that's right. He says, hell, Bill, that's great news. I've often thought if I'd have stayed any longer than 3 years, I'd have probably had more than 4 kids. So, but it's just a real pleasure to come back, and again, just owe a great deal to Woody and the opportunity to work here at Ohio State. Of course, it's always great to come back and see a lot of good friends. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bill. Our next speaker has spent 16 years as a head coach. Talks like he's an Ohio native, but if you were born in Collinsville, West Virginia, you would also. You'd always claim Ohio. He's a graduate of the largest, most unknown institution in America, until a few years ago, Kent State University. He's a former member of the 1968 National Championship staff, and he is now the head football coach at Notre Dame University, Lou Holtz.
Coach Bruce, distinguished guests at the head table, honored guests, ladies and gentlemen, and fellow coaches. It's indeed a pleasure for me to come back here to be able to honor two outstanding individuals. When I was up at the University of Minnesota, we had an opportunity to play Ohio State. And I'd like to echo what Bill Mallory said, that Earl Bruce is really and truly a great football coach, and when you're on the other side of the sideline, you really understand. It's great to see some assistant coaches who were here at Ohio State, George Chomp, etc. And as I'm sitting there, I was thinking about the time when Woody called me and asked me to come up to Ohio State. I didn't know much about the staff. He didn't offer me an awful lot of money. It's sort of like Notre Dame, the priests take the vow of poverty and the coaches practice it. He didn't say we'd move you. He didn't say we'd give you a car. He said, come on up, we'll give you a chance to coach. White came up. He spent 24 hours with me. I said, Coach, I don't know anybody on the staff. I need to talk to somebody. He said, we don't have any assistant coaches. We're all recruiting. I said, if I can't talk to an assistant coach, I don't feel I can come because I've heard some wild stories. He said, okay, Tiger Ellis will pick you up 7 o'clock in the morning. Tiger picked me up. I didn't know Tiger could man the moon. I said, Tiger, I got a difficult decision to make. I said, what kind of guy is Woody Hayes? I said, he's mean, he's strong, he's tough, he's nasty, but he's fair, and he's a great football coach. So I said to my wife, I said, honey, if Tiger can work for Woody Hayes, so can I. It's my job to please him, not his job to please me. I'll never forget the first staff meeting I went to. I smoked a pipe. Lou McKellar came in and said, you better put that pipe out because Woody says you can't smoke the pipe. Said, anybody smokes the pipe's lazy and complacent. And I said, well, if that's the case, he's going to have to explain it to me. First meeting, Coach Hayes comes in. He said, we know that pipe. I said, I'm smoking. He said, you couldn't work for Paul Brown. Paul Brown says anybody who smokes a pipe is lazy and complacent. And I said, Coach, that's why you're smarter than Paul Brown, because you really don't believe that. And I smoked that sucker the whole year I was there. But that first staff meeting was unbelievable. Coach Hayes got upset, there was arguments right there. I walk out of there, and I'm in a state of shock. I'm walking down the hall, I hear Tiger Ellison singing, oh, what a beautiful morning. I turned to Tiger, I said, Tiger, what do you think of Hitler? He said, great leader. If you know Tiger, Tiger doesn't say but great things about him, but it turned out, from that auspicious debut, turned out to be the greatest thing that's ever happened to me, to have the opportunity to coach at Ohio State with this staff. Many times, though, I felt like the guy down in Texas on the big, beautiful ranch. Invite a group of dissidents out to show them how the better half lived, but he didn't want any of them swimming in the swimming pool. So he filled it up with alligators. Then asked him, he said, if any of you have the courage to dive in the pool, swim through the alligators, I'll give you any 3 wishes. The daughter's hand in marriage, you need this ranch, $1 million in cash, because he didn't think anybody'd have the courage to do it. And no sooner turned his back than heard this splash. For 22 minutes, the guy fought the alligators and emerged victoriously, and the ranch said, I didn't think anybody'd have the courage to do it. But to show you that I'm a man of word, I'll give you any 3 wishes. The daughter's hand in marriage, you need this ranch, $1 million in cash, what's your wish? And I said, I want to know who pushed me in the pool. You've heard Lou McKellar, Bill Mallory. I want to tell you, there was a camaraderie, a feeling, the love on that staff, the like I've never seen duplicated. When we came down to our last football game, we had started 16 sophomores. And there we are playing Michigan, Bo, the year before you got there for the Big Ten Championship and the National Championship. And if you probably remember that great game, in the last minute, Coach Hayes threw on a 2-point conversion and successfully completed it. And that shocks you, because he wouldn't even have a passing gear in his car, let alone throw it. We made it to beat Michigan 50-14, and they said to Coach Hayes, why'd you go for 2? He said, because they wouldn't let me go for 3. One thing I learned being with Coach Hayes, that Michigan is not our favorite state, and all due respect, Mr. Bay and the Beauchamp Beckler. I also want to pause here and say Bo is one of the great coaches I've ever seen in my entire life, bar none. I don't know if you realize why this rivalry is so intense, but actually, Ohio and Michigan are the only two states that ever actually go to war. Colorado militia and blood was shed, and it occurred in the year 1869. It had to do with the boundary dispute over Toledo. Now, history doesn't record who won that war, but I have to assume we lost it, because I can't believe we lost it. We won. We went out to play in the Rose Bowl, and had a back with name O.J. Simpson. Coach Hayes and I got the dissertation about the best way to defend them. The last thing Coach Hayes said was he better not score a touchdown. Perhaps you remember the game, January 1, 1969, the second quarter. Southern Cal had the ball first down and 10 on their own 20. O.J. Simpson took a handoff, went 80 yards for a touchdown. I was very happy at the time I was up in the press box. Coach Hayes was on the sideline. Walked to the locker room, and the first thing that transpired was Coach Hayes, the man I admire, love, and respect. He ran up to me, strategically placed his hand on my jugular vein. Now, you have to understand, Coach Hayes, he really meant me no physical harm. He just wanted to be sure he had my undivided attention. He said, why don't you go 80 yards? I said, Coach, that's all I needed. You know? And I did, it wasn't real complicated. From there, I accepted the job at William & Mary. I went to see Coach Hayes. I said, Coach, what advice would you give me? And he said, Lou, he said, always find people who are smarter than you and better than you. And he said, in your case, that shouldn't be real difficult. I went to William & Mary, and so many things that we do today that we used to laugh about is that I think every one of them, Earl Bruce, Bill Mallory, anybody, we all coach like Coach Hayes. The values he has taught. Whether you're talking about Bill Hess or Doyle Perry or any other person, he's just an absolutely incredible human being. What makes Coach Hayes so great, there's no way you can put it into words. I'm proud and happy to be at Notre Dame and feel fortunate and honored, but I understand this. Ladies and gentlemen, I could have never gotten there if I hadn't been at Ohio State under Woody Hayes. He's an individual that he teaches you about competing. I went from here and went down to William & Mary. We had to play the naval captain. I thought that, boy, you just have to believe you can win and never give up and hang in there. And we went up to Annapolis, Maryland, at Victory Stadium, a beautiful stadium, a double-deck stadium. We gave a great talk about how we thought we could win. We just came from Ohio State. You don't lose. You believe it in here. You look up there in the balcony of the second tier in big bold letters. They got the words Iwo Jima, Guadalcanal, Saipan, Baton. One of our players said, man, we can't beat these guys. I just came from Ohio State. We didn't lose. Curved tail. I said, what do you mean we can't beat them? He said, look at the schedule they played. I'm going to sit down here, but briefly I want to say this. The three things I took away from Woody Hayes and Ohio State is one, make sure people can trust you. The guy's as honest an individual as anybody I've ever been around. He's really taught me that honesty is invaluable. He ran the cleanest program you've ever seen. Never once did he ever think about violating a rule. He's just as honest as the day is long. The second thing, he's totally committed to getting things done. Coach Hayes never allowed you to wallow in self-pity. He never allowed you to be content with where you are. He said you're either going to get better or you're going to get worse. You aren't going to stay the same. And he didn't allow you to wallow around when things didn't go well. Sort of like the blind man was being led down the street by a seeing-eyed dog and put all faith and confidence in that dog. Came to the corner of a busy intersection. The dog crossed against the light. The blind man didn't know what else to do. So he followed the dog across the street. As I said, it was a busy intersection. Cars swerved avoided, brakes squealed, horns honked. But miraculously, the blind man and the dog went across the street unharmed. He got on the other side of the street and reached in his pocket and put out a dog biscuit to his dog. And some bystander watched the whole thing transpire and said, sir, that dog crossed against the light and almost got you killed. And the last thing you want to do is give him a dog biscuit to reward him. The blind man smiled and said, I know he did. You said, you see, I'm giving him a dog biscuit so I can find out where his mouth is because I kick him right in the tail. Same thing is, He just get rid of feel pity, but he's just totally committed. The thing that most people don't know is this gentleman cares for his players more than anybody I've ever been around. You blend trust, you blend commitment, you blend a genuine love of people. There's no way in this world that you can fail. And it seems funny, the people that need love the most usually deserve it the least. So many times you want to get upset, and he would get upset, but always at the right time. He knew when to pick you up, he knew when to pull you down. He had that uncanny ability because he cared about you as a person. We played Southern Cal this year in our last football game, and we came back from 20 points down. See, the reason we were 20 points down was because of my son. Had he not roughed a kicker, we wouldn't have been that far back. And that surprised me because he hadn't hit anybody all year. He came off the field after roughing the kicker. He said, "What in the world happened?" He said, "You didn't see it?" Did you get ready to strangle them? You remember the people need love the most. Usually deserve it the least. The trust, the commitment, and the love. Before I sit down here, Coach Hayes, I do fool around with magic a little bit. Earl Bruce asked me to do this like any other newspaper. You have front pages if people want to read the news, comics for people can't read, and basically editorial page for people can't think. But Coach Hayes always felt that the newspapers always had a tendency to make you feel a little bit better than what you really are, or make things seem a little bit worse. And it's just as you go along and you're in this coaching profession long enough, you really get the firm belief. If you have a strong faith, you can get an awful lot of things done. There isn't any such thing as magic. To be there for 28 years and Earl to be there for 8 is incredible. But you know, anybody can tear down. The poem that says, "I saw a group of men tearing the building down." A group of men in my hometown. With a heave and a hoe and a mighty yell, they swung the beam, the sidewall fell. And I said to the foreman, "Are these men skilled to take it higher if you wanted to build?" He laughed and said, "Why, no, indeed." He said, "Common labor's all I need. If I could tear down a day or two, it would have took a builder 10 years to do." I thought to myself as I walked away, which of these roles am I going to play? So easy to tear down, ladies and gentlemen. So easy to criticize coaches. So easy to tear down a program. Boy, I want to tell you, to build one like Coach Hayes and Coach Bruce has done is day by day. And indeed, we're honored two exceptionally rare individuals. And Coach Hayes, you said the man should never be ashamed to cry. You should never be ashamed to say, "I love you." I want to say publicly, I love you.
Thank you, Luke. Our next speaker is a Barberton native who played and coached for Coach Hayes. His teams have won 11 Big Ten titles. In 23 years of college coaching as a head coach, he has never had a losing season. He is now the winningest coach in the University of Michigan history, having passed the immortal Fielding Yost. He is the Dean of Big Ten coaches. He is Glenn Edwards Bo Schembechler.
Ladies and gentlemen, and the honored guests up here, Woody and Earl, it's a great pleasure to be back. I don't know how welcomed I've been here this evening. Woody called me several weeks ago about this affair, and I told him that I had made a commitment with Bill Gunlock to make a speech in Dayton, Ohio tonight, and I didn't think I'd be able to come. And he said, "Well, you can get that changed." And when I went home and saw Millie, I said, "You know, Millie, 57 years old, married, 4 grown children. Someday I'm going to learn how to say no to that damn guy." So we changed the date of that dinner. No one ever sent me any information on this affair. I didn't know what time it was or anything, but I did get across to everybody what time I'd be coming in on my airplane. And I assumed that Earl would pick me up I hadn't seen Earl for a long time. I was kind of excited about that, and I wanted to see what he was wearing. But Earl didn't show up. So I walked through there. They sent Dave Tingley out there, who played here when I coached here. Dave's not very tall. Must have been a big crowd there. Everybody recognized me when I got off the plane, but Dave didn't. So I caught a cab to the... and you're laughing, but this is all true. Caught a cab to the Marriott and walked in the Marriott because they're going to have room for me there at the Marriott. And there's one girl in Columbus who really doesn't know very much or give a damn about football. I told her my name, didn't ring a bell, and they didn't have a room for me. But she found one down at the end of the 11th floor there, so got a room. I said, well, Earl will call, pick me up, take me over to the bank. I never heard from her. Hopped the cab and came out here, and of course I didn't have a ticket to get in. So that wasn't real good. And, but I want you to know, all you other people can go to hell. I'm just here because of Woody. And interestingly enough, President Jennings' remarks about Michigan brains. You hired Rick Baker. I'll bet you $100 I know why you did it. That son of a gun, when he was at Michigan, and in those great battles against Ohio State, he did more to beat Michigan than anybody you had on your team. And then when I got down here, first guy I run into is Gary Moeller, my chief assistant at Michigan. He left a staff meeting early to get down here. And now I'm going to make him drive me home. But Gary was captain here under Woody when I was a coach here. And he's been a great football coach for me at Michigan. It's always great to come down here. I really mean that. And you all made a big fuss over Lou and everybody. And Coach Holtz is a great coach. There's no question about it. You ought to make a fuss over him. That's because you damn guys don't play Notre Dame. You two will be gone by that time. Who the hell are you kidding? And if you last that long, they schedule Notre Dame so they can get rid of it. And it's great to see Bill Mowry. You know, his two sons played for me at Michigan. One of them's still on my team. And I resent the fact that Bill brought that Indiana team back to where damn hard to beat them. And so that just makes it a lot tougher for Earl and me. And it's good to see Earl again. And he is a great coach. He's done a great job here and won a lot of games, a lot of championships. I think the rivalry is as intense as it ever was. And we enjoy that rivalry, and I know you do too. And it's always particularly great to see Woody again. Because all of these guys, as you know, coached for Woody. They coached in the later years. I broke him in. It was like breaking a Bronco. I came up here early. And by the time these guys had him, he was a particularly mild coach. I'll never forget when I came here. Back in 1957, I was coaching at Northwestern. How about that one? and with Eric Archie. And we had the misfortune to lose 9 consecutive games. We never won a game. And as you know, that year Ohio State went to the Rose Bowl, came back from the Rose Bowl, and Bill Hess took the head coaching job at Ohio U. And Woody contacted me to come to Ohio State to coach the offensive line. And I went to Alex Agassi, who was on our staff at Northwestern. I said, Alex, I'd love to go to Ohio State. There'd be nothing greater for me to do. But we lost every game. I can't at this time. I can't possibly leave you guys after losing every game. I got to hang in here like you guys do. And Alex said, you damn fool, you're gone. And so I came to Ohio State. And I'll never forget, boy, it was a great year because every time Woody would get up, he'd describe, as you know, better than anybody in the history of the game, the off-tackle play, the fullback off-tackle play. And I always marveled because when he got up there, it was like it was an amazing revelation, this new play. And he taught it with such great enthusiasm, with every little technique of every player. And every once in a while I'd say, raise my hand and say, you know, I don't think that's the way to do that, Woody. I think we ought to block it a little different way and do this and that. He said, no, that's not good. We got to do it this way. This is the way this play has to be blocked. I said, no, Woody, we got to... Wait a minute. How many games you win last year? That was the last of my contributions to Ohio State football that year. But it's always great to come down here and to see these coaches, because what you see before you are really proteges of Woody's. He is our mentor. We've taken a lot from him in football. As Lou indicated, many of the good things that we do, we learn from him. The most important of which was integrity. Without integrity, there is no joy or no fun in coaching. There is no happiness in success when it wasn't done within the rules. We learned that a long time ago. And I can promise you, I compete against these fellows every day in the recruiting season. And when I go up against them, I know it's Grant Nade against Grant Nade. And that's the only way that we have been taught to compete. And we realize, too, that I'm probably the only one of these coaches who had an opportunity to play for them. And back in those days, he had just gotten out of the Navy. Figure that one, man. He had just gotten out of the Navy. He was the toughest football coach imaginable. I enjoyed playing for him. It was such a great challenge. Oh, I griped and groaned and cussed him just like everybody else did. But I played as hard as I could. I tried to be as good as I could. And we played together hard as a team. And we had good teams. And I can tell you without reservation that my philosophy of football at Michigan is that I want those people that play for me to have the same experience that I had when I played for Woody Hayes at Miami. That's my entire philosophy. I believe very strongly. Because the greatest experience I had in college was playing football. It might not have been the most important thing that I did, but it was the greatest experience I've ever had. I would like to have every guy who plays for me at Michigan to feel exactly the same way. And I'm sure these guys feel the same. So there's a lot of good with football, and there are a lot of great friendships, and a lot of fun, a lot of excitement, a lot of tough times, a lot of good times. There's nothing greater than to be a football coach. And there's nothing greater to be able to stand up and say, I'm a football coach, played for Woody, I coached for Woody, I battled against him, and I still call him one of the greatest friends I've ever had. Anytime he calls me, whatever he wants me to do, wherever I am, he can count on. I'll be there and I'll do it. I promise you that. And it's a great thrill to be back here and to see him again, and to see him looking so good and feeling so good. It just makes me happy. It makes my day just to have a chance to see it. So thank you all for inviting me down here. I'm just kidding you about all those things, although they actually happen. I want you to know, it's always great to see you, old man.
Thank you, Bo. This next young gentleman is already at a young age in the Ohio State and the National College Football Hall of Fame. He's one of only 2 people to ever be 2-time Big Ten MVP. He's a 2-time captain at our university and a 2-time Heisman Trophy winner. Whether on the football field or in the classroom, on the neighborhood playground or the businessmen's conference or at church, Archie Griffin is class and a leader. Archie.
Thank you, Jim. I want you to know, listening to that introduction kind of reminds me of the man who on Judgment Day stuck his head out the grave and read the epitaph on his tombstone and said, either somebody's a terrible liar or I'm in the wrong hole. It's great to be here this evening to honor Coach Bruce and Coach Hayes, because they are what all of these coaches have said, men of integrity. You know, I've had the opportunity to play organized football for over 20 years. And I've got to tell you, the time that I spent at Ohio State, those 4 years, were most definitely the most gratifying. And I don't say that, Coach Jim Beckler, because during those years we were Big Ten championships for 4 straight years. Or because we went to the Rose Bowl for 4 years. But I say that because of the relationships that were developed amongst players and coaches, a lot of whom are here tonight. And it's really great to see all of you here. But one coach in particular, Coach Woody Hayes. I've said it before and I'll say it again. Coach Hayes is everything that a player could want in a coach. And you're right, Coach Hayes, Coach Holtz, when you said that he's a dedicated man. He most certainly is. He's dedicated to the game of college football, and he's dedicated to this fine university that we're all here representing. He's a man who is extremely honest. He does not like cheaters. He wouldn't have you on his team if you're a cheater, or he wouldn't have you as a coach if you're a cheater. But I got to tell you, the thing I like most about Coach Hayes is he's a man who cares a great deal about people. And I'm an example of that. Because I'll never forget when Coach Hayes was recruiting me out of Eastmore High School. And I remember this one particular day that he called our coach's office, and I was in wrestling practice. And the coach came up to our wrestling room and told me that Coach Hayes wanted to talk to me over the phone. Well, I was really excited about Coach Hayes wanting to talk to me, because the only reason he could have wanted to talk to me was because he wanted me to play football for him at Ohio State. And I was really excited about it, just having the opportunity to be with Coach Hayes. And when I got on the phone, he asked me to go to dinner with him at his favorite restaurant, The Highlight. And I remember that evening as I went home, I hurried. And I got dressed up. I wasn't used to wearing a tie, but I figured I'd better wear one that night. And I went to dinner with Coach Hayes. And all night we talked about a number of different things. I remember going home that night. My father asked me how the dinner went with Coach Hayes. And I told him, I said, Daddy, you know, I don't think Coach Hayes wants me to play football for him. He said, why is that? I said, he never said one thing to me about playing football. He said, well, what did he talk about? I said, all night all he talked about was an education and the importance of getting an education. Well, I remember my father looking at me in a strange way, and he said, well, Archie, don't you think he's concerned about you as a person, and not just somebody that's going to get out on the field and run for a lot of yards for him or score touchdowns for him? Well, right then I really didn't know. But when I accepted the scholarship to come to Ohio State, I found out that this man was concerned about his athletes as people. I remember in our first meeting that we attended, he told us that if we were in school for anything else other than to get an education, then we might as well leave. You know, a lot of people probably think the first book that we received from Coach Hayes was probably our playbook, but it wasn't. It was a book called Word Power, because he wanted to make sure all of us did well in English. That's how much he cared for us. He had a saying, an athlete without an education should be headed for a bad situation. And that was so true, because a lot of times you do find that athletes go to college just to get a chance to play in the professional ranks, not really realizing that there's only a very small few that can make it in the professional ranks. Well, Coach Hayes drove home that point to us. And I, as an athlete, and I'm sure you all who are here, former players of Coach Hayes, feel the same way, that he really did us justice, because he drove that point home to all of us. And I can appreciate that. And that's why I'm so proud to be back here at Ohio State University, because our coach that we have here right now, Coach Earl Bruce, is of that same mold. He cares a great deal about his players. It's important to him that his players do as well in the classroom as they do on the football field. And as Vic Bay said, Coach Bruce is graduating his players at a real good rate. And I got to tell you, that's something that all of us can be extremely proud of. But before I sit down, I thank you all for having me here. And I want you to know that I feel very, very proud to have had an opportunity to play for this man, Coach Hayes. And I feel very, very proud to be able to be working with Coach Earl Bruce. We've got a great team here, and I appreciate all of you coming out in honor of these two people. Thank you.
Thanks, Art. Our next speaker is a 1949 graduate of the Ohio State University. 53, gentlemen. We must have cheated in our press book. He's a former player and coach under Coach Hayes. He was on our 1968 National Championship staff. He's been a winner at Salem, Sandusky, the winningest coach in the history of Massillon High School. He's been a winner at Tampa. He's been a winner at Iowa State, and he is a winner at the Ohio State University. Our head football coach, Earl Bruce.
President Jennings, Director Ray, hey, most certainly distinguished coaches, Archie, Coach Hayes, ladies and gentlemen, and Buckeye players. It's great to be here tonight, and I think I really appreciate the time that these people took to come here. And it hasn't changed, though. I noticed Bo, he could fit right in here in Columbus, Ohio, because the first thing they do is point the finger at the football coach if nothing goes right. And it wasn't my responsibility. But anyhow, it's nice to be here, and you know, it's a great evening when you honor Coach Hayes. And that's the name of the game, because he's done so much for Ohio State football and this great university. Yeah, I did come to this university in 1949 as a student athlete. And I recognized one thing rather quickly as a young player, that there were great coaches on the staff. When I think of Esco and Harry Strobel and Lau Clark and Bill Hess, Bo was a graduate assistant when I came. A smiling graduate assistant, I might say, right out of Miami. And they were friendly and warm and made you feel welcome in a university that was supposed to be big and cold. It never has been that, ever, at Ohio State University. It's always been warm and friendly and concerned and interested in your problems and the way to solve them. No, I, like a lot of others probably at Ohio State, I wasn't starting football player at Ohio State ever. But the one thing I noticed is when I got in trouble, they cared about me and gave me great direction. The coaches cared, had a great attitude toward the players. worked hard at it. Sure, that comes from the top sometimes. That came from Coach Hayes. There's no doubt about that. And he had great discipline. I can remember times when he was coaching when I was in 1951, when if you fumbled, that was the end of you. That was a disaster. You never wanted to drop the ball. And he told you why. Many times people and teachers don't tell you why you failed. He instructed you how to hold on to that ball, how to catch the ball and look it in, how you don't pass late over the middle, or it's intercepted, and an interception is bad. And pretty soon there were too many things that could happen throwing the ball, so we went to running the ball. And I also went to those clinics where Coach Hayes taught the 26-27 play for 2 hours, and as a high school coach, God, I sit there in awe of how he taught. And it was easy to see why he was successful. You know, we talk about him liking people. I want to just go back a minute and tell you a little story. I got married in 1955. And at that time I was coaching, an assistant coach at Mansfield, Ohio. Just before that, I brought down my wife to a party they used to have around Memorial Day. They bring in the junior recruits. And I brought a kid down, I'll never forget his name, Jerry Bebout, I believe, that later went to Purdue and played tackle at Purdue. But I came in and I brought Gene in and introduced Coach to Gene. And I'll never forget something. About a year later, I brought Gene up and we were walking up and Coach Hayes reached out and put his hand out and said, "Hi, Gene." Well, he doesn't know this, but that started a great love affair for Gene with Coach Hayes. We got back in the car and she looked over at me and all she said was, "He remembered my name. He remembered my name." I said, "What are you talking about?" He said, "Do you realize that that was the second time he ever met me and he remembered my name?" If you know anything about Coach Hayes, that's one of his things. If he saw you in an airport and was introduced to you in an airport 20 years ago and ran into you, he would remember your name. That's something that he did rather well because he really worked at it and he really liked to do that, and that is a way of caring for people. He has a great memory for names and for things that happen, for events. History? Yes. English? Yes. Football? Yes. Very intense in football during the season, very intense in recruiting, and after that, in anything that came up, we would discuss it. And boy, discuss it. When I came to Ohio State as assistant football coach, the first thing I got was a list of duties and responsibilities for the coaches. I never saw those before. I didn't know those existed. I thought I was a pretty good coach and well organized, but here they are, and they're dished out. And I remember one. I remember a lot of those. The duties that you got, because boy, you were responsible for that. And Bill Mallory there, I remember him. One of his duties was the weather. The weather. He had to come up with a weather report every morning at 8 o'clock. Whether it was going to rain, whether the field needed cover, how we were going to practice, because we were on grass and the field got muddy, boy, everything dissolved. I didn't believe the weather was that important in football at that time. I didn't realize that when we drew the lines and did everything, I saw the importance of the hash marks in football for the first time. I remember one day we're practicing and we're going across the field. He said, "Oh, stop, you can't do that. You got to practice on the hash marks." Daggone important. But Bill was the weather coach. I'll go back to that in a minute. Because I noticed that Bill's kind of a nervous guy. He sits in the front row and he scrapes his foot like that, and there's all kind of marks on the floor because he's nervous. Coach stopped him a few times, but when it came to the weather report, my desk was right next to Bill. And one day I used to try to put him on a little bit, and I said, "What about the weather, Bill?" He said, "Oh my gosh!" He runs back and dials up the phone. He says, "Ellie, what's the weather for today?" I said, "I thought you were the weather coach." He says, "No, I given Ellie that job. She's got to have it every morning." And boy, she rattled it off. Dry, sunny, clear, no rain. He's talking about organization. One of my jobs I'll never forget, and I want to tell you about this because Rudy Hubbard would really enjoy this story, was the movies. The movies. Can you imagine being in charge of the movies? Well, my job was to get the paper on Friday when we went on the trips, or in the morning, and bring the paper in with all the... You could not have any sex, any music, any comedy, any gory killing. I didn't get much time to go to the movies back when I was working for Coach Hayes. I didn't know one movie from the other. We went up to Minnesota in 1969. I had the job for 2 years. And there were two choices that started at 7:45. That was another thing. It had to start before 7:45, 7:30 to 7:45. It was out if it didn't start at that. So you got two movies. You got Disney movie and Easy Rider. The team threatened to kill me if we went to the Disney. And I didn't know about Easy Rider, but I knew I would die a horrible death if there was anything. Have you ever seen Easy Rider? God bless it, we went to see Easy Rider. I didn't know about drugs at the time, to tell you the truth. I didn't know about that guy being blown off by the redneck down there in Louisiana. I saw it all happen, but I didn't like it. We rode back on the bus. We were just a little bit late, and there was Coach Hayes waiting for the bus. And we had a guy we called Scooter, who was normally the first guy off the bus, and that's Dave McLean at the time. And he got off the bus rather hurriedly, because he's always first. And he walked off, and Woody said to him, I'll never forget, Woody said, how was the movie? And I'm coming off the bus second, I think, oh. He says, it was terrible. It was terrible. I said, oh, Dave, oh my golly, how could you do that to me? That day, I want to be honest with you, as I see it now, Coach Hayes, we played the next day. We were averaging something like 46 to 56 points a game at that time. We beat them, I think, if I looked at the record correctly, something like 36 to 13. But honestly, we played pretty well, with the exception we couldn't stop the slip screen to the third guy, and they kept the ball on us a little bit. When we came back on Monday morning, we're analyzing why we only scored 36 points. And Coach Hayes sitting there, and he said, why did we score 36 points? And why did we only score 36 points? And I think, golly days, I don't understand that. And all of a sudden he said, I know why. It's that damn movie we went to. I said, oh, man. He says, and you're fired as the movie guy. Rudy, you got the movies. I went, oh, am I glad of that. I lost a movie job just like that. And I'm glad but you talk about directed work effort. You talk about organization. You talk about discipline. You talk about caring about people, integrity. Boy, Woody, I'd give you a job right now, and that's the Commissioner of the Southwest Conference. He'd clean it up just like that. He'd clean it up just like that. There's no doubt about it. You know, if you really follow the careers of coaches and the people that come out from the schools and go to head coaching jobs, I've learned one thing. I'm going to be direct. I never learned to cheat at Ohio State. I didn't know what they were talking about when they talked about the packages of $40 and $60 and $80,000. My coaches come back and say, did you hear about what's going on down there? And this was 3 or 5. We didn't have that up in Ohio. We didn't have it in Ohio. We didn't have it because of that man, because he wouldn't allow it to happen in Ohio, where they're in Penn State, Michigan, Notre Dame, except are good, clean schools, and the programs are run clean. But when you think about that, the integrity that's established in the game of football comes from the leader, and when they learn, how could you cheat? I wouldn't know how to offer a kid any money. I didn't know it was ever done. I used to think, some coaches used to talk about it, used to say, I'm going to watch Coach Hayes when we go out recruiting. There's nothing to offer. room board, but the real recruiting gem from Coach Hayes was always in the kitchen with the prospect and his father, but more attention to the mother than you've ever seen. Because he knew the way, and he did it to the directed recruiting effort with the great education and the great beliefs that he has in the game of football and in life to come out. Yeah, I think that quite clear that you win with quality people. People that can't be bought, that can't be put in slavery, that can't be cheated with. You win with people that want to play the game for just what it gives. The hard work and the dedication and the pride and the things that come real easy, the loyalty. That's what he's established here more than anything else, loyalty in the player. I think, Coach, I got to tell you one thing. I was always amazed when I heard the story about the 3 doctors, first in the class of medicine. I guess you're going to mention them, Chonko, Hungerford, and Derbyshire. 3 great ones that were the first in the class. I know I could never match that, but I want to tell you one thing that I'm proud of as a coach. We did have Mike Lanise, who was a Rhodes Scholar, and he most certainly did a lot for us, and he's one of the things that I remember in college football, a Rhodes Scholar. And I've heard Coach Hayes, you know what, you really do learn if you listen. And I can remember Coach Hayes doing so much with the players about, hey, what's been good for you, remember that you pay ahead, pay back, whatever you call it. He's talked about it a lot. He talked about it to our team. Talked about it to me, talked about it to his team. We've all heard it. The greatest story we've had at Ohio State for me is the story of Jim Lachey, who went to pro football a couple years ago and pledged a lot of money to this university. A 6-figure gift, and he's paid it off in 2 years. That's something. That's something when you really think, and the time that people put in as committeemen around here to help this thing grow and prosper. That's through the efforts of Coach Hayes. He set the tone. He did most anything it demanded of his time, gave of every minute of his time for this university. And that's why you're here. Because the greatness is here. And I'm going to tell you something else. I'd be the first to cheer if they name that building the Woody Hayes Football Building. Because I know that every time I walked in that building, I'd be thinking about the impact that he had on my life. We always talk in circles about impact football players. Players that are coming in and playing right away, contributing right away. Coach Hayes is an impact football coach, an impact person. Look at him. And I want to tell you something else. I guess the real thing would be heaven. If you really would stand up, I guess you stand up all those football coaches, assistant football coaches, or people that have been associated with the Ohio State program. When they would stand up, you would see what this program he's really turned out. And I too am here for one reason, to honor Coach Hayes, because he's been great for this university, for our football program, and for the community of Columbus, Ohio. He's been tremendous. Let's give him a good applause.
Ladies and gentlemen, I think you welcomed that chance to stand a little bit. Would you want to stand a little bit now? And because it is getting late, but I'll try not to talk very long. But I'll tell you, I couldn't win a single ball game today. After getting all these accolades, I'd be so fat-headed that no one could win. Yeah. And there's no one deserves all the fine things that have been said here today. There's no one deserves that. I know I don't. But tonight, when I came here, and last night when I checked over our list and went to bed and started thinking of all the great, great, great athletes we've had here, and of all the great, great coaches we've had here. Anybody who couldn't win with people like that is no darn good. And I mean that seriously. Gee whiz, we've had a lot of great athletes. And I got to thinking of one last night, the one who put us in the road to victory, the one who really, really got us started, is a little redhead back here by the name of Hop Cassidy. Where is he? Stand up. That little man could do anything. Now, some of you are too young to remember all the football he played, but that interception against Michigan for 88 yards and a touchdown is the greatest play I've seen in the Ohio Stadium. It was just wonderful. He caught this ball, they were ahead. He started up the middle and set the defense and cut to the left, and Dean Duggar got a good block for him. And he went down the sideline for about 50 yards and cut back and went the rest of the way to the other side. The greatest run I believe I've ever seen. He did that so many different ways, on punt returns, interceptions, passes, anything. He did it. He did it. Now, I don't like to single out a man like that, but it's true. He's the man who really got us started here. And we've had so many, many great players with him. Just great players. As a matter of fact, on that 54 team that won the national championship, you go right down the line. The center was Bob Thornton. He's here tonight. Jim Reichenball, the right guard, is here tonight. Moose Mashinsky, a 210-pound tackle, was just great. And he'd have been All-American that year if it weren't for Cassidy and Parker. And Parker was selected then as the outstanding guard in 50 years of college football. Outstanding for 50 years, just a great guard. I was hoping he'd be here tonight, but he disappointed us. He told me yesterday he was driving over from Baltimore, but he did not make it. So we're disappointed with that one. But there are so many, many great ball players. Dick Brubaker fouled in the end zone with a touchdown that won the ball game against Michigan that year. And Bobby Watkins was a great back. He's going to the East Coast and couldn't make it. And Hubert Bobo is clear on the West Coast and he couldn't make it. But these were all great, great football players, along with great coaches. One who could not be here tonight, Dwight Perry. He's got a heart situation. He's down in Florida and he couldn't make it. But we had so many great coaches. The late Bill Hetz was there. And Lyle Clark and so many, Esco Sarkin and Gene Feckety. All of them great coaches. They worked hard, just as it has already been implied. And these men who came here to honor us tonight, to honor us, they couldn't be greater coaches. They're just the best anywhere. And let me tell you a nice story about Schembeck. I called him about a month ago and I said, the silliest thing you ever did was take that bowl game out there in Hawaii. He said, "Oh wait, Coach, you know why I did it?" And I said, "No." He said, "I did it because the mother's 84 years old, and I promised to take her to Hawaii." And he said, "I took her, and it took Sammy, my son that's in high school." And he said, "We took one full day and toured that island," and he said, "My mother loved it." And it never got done talking about it since she got back. That's the sort of thing you don't read about Bo, but he's sort of a soft guy. And it goes without saying, a wonderful, wonderful guy. Yeah, and Coach, shoot, they just don't come any better. They just don't come any better. And there's one thing that people better know. As a matter of fact, I might tell a quick story on this. I was out at Columbus West High School years ago, and I walked into the washroom with a hat, and here's an old man standing there at the urinal, and here a 9-year-old kid runs up, unzips, has no trouble at all, and just as he got done, the old man looked down at him, and he said, "Son, you don't know how good you got it." You know, this league, not just Ohio State, but the Big Ten, gives me great, great pride. This man 3 years ago turned down all the money you could ever imagine to get down to Texas. Hell no, he wouldn't go. No, he liked the Big Ten. I was proud of the man out of Iowa this spring, Hayden Fry, that turned down a big chunk of money out at USC. And then this fall, the proudest of all, is right there. He turned down a lot of money to stay here. Now, why do they stay here? Because it's an easy league? Hell no, these guys just knock the thunder out of one another every fall. They really, really bang heads. No, they stayed in this league because they respect it, because they like this league, because they've helped to build the kind of a league it is. And Mr. President, I won't give them all the credit on that one. I'll take some of that. Yeah, a few years ago, a coach who took another job in the Big Ten said, "You know, when I was hired here, I don't like Woody Hayes." Well, I told him I don't give a damn because I'm not running a popularity contest. And they had had the dirtiest in the country, and even their president came down and sat at my table. What did he want? Did he want me to withdraw those charges? I don't know. But we certainly didn't do it, and they haven't gotten out of their trouble yet. It's a darn shame, and some of their coaches were not involved at all. But they had some other ones that were real first-class crooks. But we didn't let it happen in our leagues. And that's why this league is so clean. Because your two top schools in it, Ohio State and Michigan, are just as clean, what old Teddy Roosevelt used to say, as clean as a hound's tooth. And by golly, they're clean. And we play it that way, and we make the other people live up to it. And it's a darn fine league. And you can take a look at these coaches here. They're just as clean as they can be. I'm proud of Bill Mallor. He's got a tough job to do there, but he's doing a great, great job. I'm proud of Lou Holtz. Lou Holtz made disagreement when he went to Minnesota. He told their athletic board, he said, "I want you to know something. There's one other job I'd rather have." And he said, "If it's offered to me, I'll take it." Well, they took him at Minnesota a year later. Notre Dame was open, and they offered him the job, and now he's got that great job at Notre Dame. Those are honest people. Honest people, that's the way it is. That's why I'm so honored tonight to have these men come to speak. Yeah, it's just wonderful to have them. And the people who built that are right here tonight. They're the people who are playing the cleanest ball of all the country. Other places think you got to cheat to win. You can't cheat with them. They're just too damned honest, and their parents are too honest, and they won't put up with that. And we got the right kids here. There isn't a doggone kid here can ever say he was offered a dime that he was not supposed to get. Because you don't win that way, you don't play that way. And I hope you do appreciate the great moral backing of Big Ten football. It's just wonderful, and we sure want to keep it that way. And here's the man at our university who do that for us, right here. Pressure? Sure, there's pressure. But when Earl Bruce made the decision to stay here and turn down that other money to stay here, it showed one thing. He has great respect for this university, and he has great respect for the Big Ten Conference. And that's why he stayed. That's why we'll have great athletics here, because of Earl Bruce's attitude. And when he decided to stay, you know who liked that the best? His players. His players were tickled to death that he wanted to stay at Ohio State. Look at his recruiting this year. Zoom. Because they like a man who likes his job, and he certainly does. Yeah. That same thing happened to Bo a couple of years ago when he turned down the job down south. Yeah. He didn't get down there where he could get players that are the best money can buy. But those aren't good enough. Those aren't good enough. They'll cheat. We don't want that. And that's why I am so doggone proud of this league we have, and of the three men we have here tonight. Bo, who is a fabulous coach, and sitting over there is another great coach, but he took him from Ohio State, Jerry Moeller. And Bill Mallory, who's done a great job at Indiana. And now Lou Holtz has done a great job. You know what he told me about 2 weeks ago? I called him on this party. He said, you know, Coach, I have been in 81 homes. 81 homes since the season is over. Sure, he wants to know a kid well. He wants to know that kid really well. And he does a great job with him. And I told you I wasn't going to talk to you very long tonight, and I'm not. But what I've said and the greatness and goodness of college football is epitomized in this man right here, Earl Bruce. He's the man who makes it go here. He's the man, Bo Schembechler, who makes it go at Michigan. He's the man, along with Indiana's head coach, and along with Lou Holtz. He's got the same situation there. I don't know, he might want in the Big Ten. He wants to play Big Ten schools, I know that. But I'm not going to talk any longer tonight. But I'm going to say this. I'm enormously proud of the football players and the coaches that we've turned out. I hope that for the next 50 years, we shall continue to have great athletes, great coaches, and great people at these great universities. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Coach. Coach. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. We very much appreciate your support and attendance. Drive carefully.
Coach, you have one of my old football players, David Key, up there. You take care of him. Hey, he's a good one. He wants to play defense. Well, I tell you what, we used to have to keep him out of defense when he was in high school. Free safety, Coach.
I'm going to play him at the short corner, see what he can do this spring.
He wants to play defense. He wants to play. Yeah, I know what he wants to do. He wants to play. I was talking to him this year. He came back to Hartford with me, and I coached another high school.
Across the field, show them, oh hi, 'cause here we got the team, why don't we set the earth reverberating with a mighty cheer. Rock, 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 hit them hard and see how they fall. Never let that team get the ball. Hail, hail, the gang's all here, so we'll win that conference now.
Years in Columbus radio and TV, and I cannot remember one single event since 1951 that has been as devastating to the entire community as the passing of Woody Hayes. The former Ohio State football coach who led the Buckeyes to a pair of Big Ten crowns, to a pair of national titles rather, and 13 Big Ten crowns or co-championships in 28 years, died in his sleep early this morning. Woody had celebrated his 74th birthday less than a month ago. Throughout the day, presidents, vice presidents, former presidents, coaches, athletic directors, businessmen, fans, friends, and former players have been sharing their thoughts about Wayne Woodrow Hayes.
Much of what I do and what I am and what I believe in, I got from him. And, you know, having the unique experience of playing for him and then coaching for him for 6 years and then competing against him for a decade. Our relationship is probably, you know, different than most of the people that he's coached.
Columbus, Ohio is poor today. This morning, Wayne Woodrow Hayes died at the age of 74. I'm Dave Kaler, and I'd like to have you join me as WBNS TV looks back at Woody's life and accomplishments. Woody Hayes was an intricate man with many different interests and talents, but most of all, he'll be remembered for being a football coach. Honor of dotting the I in the incomparable Script, Ohio, the trademark of the Ohio State University Marching Band.
perhaps the greatest honor came when he addressed the 1986 graduating class at The Ohio State University winter commencement.
Graduates, Mr. President, faculty members, friends, and families of the graduates who have done so much and sacrificed so much to make this possible. Today is the greatest day of my life, and Mr. President, you've certainly helped to make it that way. I appreciate it so much to get to come here and talk to a graduating class at The Ohio State University, the great, great university that you and I have. And if I don't do a good job today, it'll be because I clutched. And you don't very often do that in a contest. But I am so grateful and so appreciative to be here today. I can't just tell you how much. I would like to start out with something that I use in almost every speech, and that is paying forward. Paying forward, and that is the thing that you folks with your great education from here can do for the rest of your life. I was so happy the other day when I saw in the paper about Jim Lachey, who played here a year ago and comes back after 1 year of professional football to give a gift to the university in 6 figures, in 6 figures. And what he said was, I received a great education here, and I got to play great football under Coach Bruce and under a great football system here. And he said, I want to help some other youngster to do the same thing. And if you take that attitude toward life, that you're going to pay forward, because so seldom can we pay back, because those whom you owe, your parents and those people, will be gone. But you do want to pay. Emerson had something to say about that. He said you can pay back only seldom, but he said you can always pay forward, and you must pay line for line, deed for deed, and cent for cent. He said, beware of too much good accumulating in your palm, or it will fast corrupt. That was Emerson's attitude, and no one put it better than he did.
As far as his education was concerned. And we all say here, when we hear Woody speak, he holds his audiences spellbound. You know, they just cling for every word, that we're hearing his father speak again. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And if there is such a thing as immortality, I think it's carried on in Woody from his father.
Woody practically worshipped his older brother Ike, also a gifted athlete. Ike attended Iowa State and achieved All-American honors in football. Woody's sister Mary became a vaudeville actress, successfully working alongside George Jessel in several plays. Woody was the youngest, and he chose to attend college at Denison University in Granville, Ohio.
Woodrow Hayes was born in Clifton, Ohio. That's a tiny village in Clark County. But he, along with his brother Ike and sister Mary, grew up in Newcomers Town, where their most famous neighbor was the great baseball pitcher, Cy Young.
He always called me Woodrow. He made you feel grown up. And he would talk to me. Any question I had, he'd answer it. Yeah. He always smoked that doggone corncob pipe. Always did. I've always been a hero worshiper, and he was my first hero. He was the first one. Actually, my brother and I, when we were in high school, used to box out there because they'd have big parties for the Elks Club and for the American
regret it.
Well, not really. No, I enjoyed coaching. I truly enjoyed it. Well, I'd like to have gotten into a courtroom. Some of these lawyers I read about today, I'd like to get in opposite them.
Really?
Like very much. Oh, yes. Oh, I love to compete. Sure. That's the basis of life.
After the war, his springboard to the big time came from his successful coaching tour at Miami of Ohio. He went from the cradle of coaches to the graveyard of coaches, Ohio State, in 1951. The football program there was in shambles. When he arrived, he was faced by a hostile student body, a hostile press, and a nervous administration. A coach with a lesser ego may have folded, but a challenge always inspired Woody, and he accepted this one with the zeal of an evangelist. In his fourth season, he produced a national championship team, but his skyrocketing fame and fortune earned him more than a few critics on campus. Jealousy is not pretty, but rarely was it as ugly as the hostility that developed between a certain clique in the faculty and the athletic department. It culminated in 1961, when Ohio State handily won the Big Ten, but the faculty council voted to deny Ohio State's participation in the Rose Bowl. Woody would call the team the Forgotten Champions. He agitated his critics with vintage Woody Hayes.
You know, the older I get, and I shouldn't say this because it'll always be misconstrued, but the older I get, the less I care about what they say. I'm sorry, I have to level with Woody Hayes, but I don't have to level with them. And as long as I feel I'm treating these youngsters right, and I'm trying honestly to help them get an education, why, I don't care much what they say, because I'll step into their classroom and do a better job there than they'll ever do on the football field.
Probably Woody Hayes' greatest asset was his ability to recruit players, and he recruited some great ones. 56 became All-Americans, and he coached 3 Heisman Trophy winners. Among the best was Archie Griffin. He invoked the image of his father as a guide. When asked who had the most influence on his life,
My dad. No doubt about it. He was a great man. And you know who else says that same thing? Archie Griffin. His dad has had more effect on him than anybody else. But my dad was a great educator. He made you do it. He was very disappointed if you didn't do it. And you could learn from him. Gee whiz, he seemed to know everything. That's terrible to brag about your dad that way, but it's true. He was just that good. And my mother was right behind him and helping him every way she could.
Else until you've learned to respect yourself. The 2 things that are always in a good home is, number 1, the kid is wanted. He knows that long before he can toddle. Number 2, there's discipline in that home, and discipline always implies disciples. He believes in those who took care of him and started to guide him. Those 2 things are always there, and I look for them. Now, not often, but sometimes we ran onto this youngster from this bad home or no home at all. He didn't get to choose that home, and we must be aware of that.
Certain rules that you just do not break. But when you live within those rules, it gives you a greater strength. And I like to feel that man upstairs is sort of cheering for you when you live right.
When I heard that he had died, I just decided to come out. I don't go to many things like this, but with Woody, he's a very special person.
Good afternoon. I'm Roy Briscoe along with Dave Kaler. We're here at First Community Church in Marble Cliff, Ohio, where memorial services for Coach Woody Hayes are about to begin.
Taking part in that service today will be the senior minister here at First Community, the Reverend Barry L. Johnson, as well as the pastor emeritus here, Arthur Sanders. Also, the president of Ohio State University, Edward Jennings, is expected to make some remarks. The featured speaker today, in honor of Wayne Woodrow Hayes, will be a former president of the United States, Richard M. Nixon.
The crowd actually started lining up outside the church around 1:30 this afternoon. The doors weren't open, however, until 2:30, and the church is absolutely filled to capacity. The church holds 1,400 people, and all 1,400 seats are occupied at this moment.
The configuration here at First Community, Roy, is one of a cross, and at the wings of the cross, which go to the sides of the front of the church, are filled with primarily former OSU football players and coaches. And let me tell you, there are hundreds of them here today, people that probably have hundreds of Woody stories to tell as well.
And I know that you met many of them that you were in school with.
Quite a few of them have come back from the mid-'60s, from 62 through 67.
And now I think the services are about to begin.
Steve and Kathy and all of Woody's family, we welcome you to this very special occasion when we honor this uncommon man.
Special memories which gathered about his life, and there are so many of them. We thank you for his dedication to that in which he believed. The belief that in every single human soul, often there was more than even that person knew, and how much he wanted to bring out the very best in every human person.
Wayne Woodrow Hayes will be remembered and deeply missed by all of us here today, and by many others across this great nation. He'll be remembered as a father and a husband, a coach, a loyal member of the Ohio State University family, a mentor, a benefactor, a truly great man. He was all these things and many more. A complex man, certainly, and on one who earned our respect, admiration, and love.
Next, we would hear from the one who honors us with his presence and honors Woody as well, the former President of the United States, the Honorable Richard Nixon.
I first met Woody Hayes 30 years ago. It was after the Ohio State-Iowa football game at Ohio Stadium. Incidentally, for those of you who are football fans, you've never been to a football game till you've been to one at Ohio Stadium. The final score was 17-13, and Woody has won his second national championship. And that evening, John Bricker gave a reception, a victory reception at his home. And I first met Woody Hayes. Well, I wanted to talk about football, and Woody wanted to talk about foreign policy. Well, you know Woody, we talked about foreign policy. Over the next 30 years, I got to know the real Woody Hayes, the man behind the media myth. I found that he was not the Neanderthal, know-nothing that some people thought of him, but that he was a Renaissance man, a man with a great sense of history and with a profound understanding of the great forces that move the world. I found that instead of being just that tyrant that you sometimes see on the football field, that he was actually a softy, a warm-hearted man. He often spoke to me about his boys, as he used to call them, and of his affection for them and for his family. And if I were to share with you a letter that he wrote to me shortly after Mrs. Nixon had a stroke 10 years ago. He said, "You and I are about the two luckiest men in the world. from the standpoint of marriage with your Pat and my Ann. I know you will agree that neither of us could have done better, and neither of us deserves to do so well. You must remember that Woody knew there were risks. After all, there is a rule of life. If you take no risks, you will suffer no defeats. But if you take no risks, you will win no victories. Woody was not one that would play it safe. He played to win. And in the next 9 years, he won some great victories. 6 straight Big Ten championships from 1972 to 1977. And he suffered some shattering defeats. The incident at the Gator Bowl in 1978 would have broken, crushed an ordinary man. But Woody was not an ordinary man. Winston Churchill has written that success is never final, and that failure is never fatal. That was Woody Hayes' maxim. He was never satisfied with success, and he would never be discouraged by failure. You look back at the 9 last years of his life, they were probably his greatest. He traveled all over the country, inspiring audiences with his fine speeches. And the honorariums that he received, thousands and thousands of dollars, he gave to the Woody Hayes Cancer Fund at Ohio State University. And then on his birthday, this compassionate man, born on Valentine's Day, appropriately, he had a program where thousands of dollars were raised in what was called a phone-a-thon and given for crippled children. And so Woody, having done these things, he also kept his hand in football. You would see pictures of him giving pep talks to the Ohio State football team that he loved so much, now coached by one of his boys, Earl Bruce. And in those last years, he basked in the warm glow of tributes from those who had played under him and many others who had come to know him and to respect him and to love him. When we think of Woody's background and what he accomplished, I think it is important to know that at the end of his life, just last year, he received what I think was his greatest tribute. The National Coaches Association for high schools and colleges gave him their highest honor, the Amos Alonzo Stagg Award. They honored him for being an outstanding coach. But even more important, they honored him for being a great humanitarian. 2,000 years ago, the poet Sophocles wrote, "One must wait until the evening to see how splendid the day has been." All of us can be thankful that Woody Hayes, in the evening of his life, could look back and see how splendid the day had been.
For the people of Newcomers Town, it was probably a common sight. Ike and Woody horsing around by the mill pond, doing what brothers do, wrestling in the grass, catching frogs, skipping rocks across that glass, smooth water. Somewhere, sometime in that sleepy little town east of Columbus, these two characters picked up the inside track on human values. They learned integrity is the essence of character. They learned courage is the conqueror of fear. And they learned people are more important than power. And thus, crediting their parents for this phenomenal base, they began to work variations on the theme. Ike would go on to become an All-American football player at Iowa State University. And Woody would go on to become one of the most successful coaches in the history of the game. Their last great moment together came in 1955, when Ike took out a second mortgage on his home in Waterloo, Iowa, in order to take the whole family to Pasadena for the Rose Bowl, where he would watch his brother win his first national championship as the Buckeyes defeated Southern Cal 20-7. And just 25 days later, Ike would succumb to a heart attack at the age of 43. So Woody was left with the memory of a best friend who happened to be his brother, and a tremendous legacy to fulfill. And Woody did it. His most recent book, the Rabbi Harold Kushner suggests that the passing of a man is akin to the tossing of a stone into a still pond. At first, there is this big splash around the death, and then the ripples begin to tumble one on the other as friends recall stories, anecdotes, quotes, experiences. But all too soon, the ripples fade, and the stranger asks, "What difference did this man make?" Today, we are gathered to honor the memory of one whose life made a phenomenal difference. It'll be a long time before his ripples still. And even then, Woody Hayes will be remembered as the quintessential blend of pride and principle. The masses knew him as a tenacious tactician, a competitive mastermind who loved the battle and lived for the win. But we knew a little bit more than the masses. And even as we gather here to honor him today, I think we would be remiss if we did not take a moment to say thank you to that family that practiced the grace of dwelling in the shadow. Famous people need fabulous families, and Woody had one. Like any little boy, Steve fashioned himself after his dad. As soon as he learned to write, he found himself preoccupied with X's and O's. And so he would design plays He was always presenting them to his dad, saying, "Hey, Dad, try this, take this." And of course, they were great plays, like triple reverses, flea flickers, wild passes, and we all know how Woody responded to that. But we see the guy in the middle. I wish America had known the guy in the middle. Not that man storming around the house, not the one dumping his ego all over people, not the one doing all the things that people like to use ink with. I want to see somebody talk about a husband concerned about something he cared deeply for, consulting the one he trusted most. So let's go back to that mill pond in Newcomer's Town. Let's toss that symbolic stone into the water marked Wayne Woodrow Hayes, and let's ask the question, what difference does this life make? Is it in 33 years of coaching, 238 victories, 72 defeats, 10 ties? I think not. Is it in 13 Big Ten championships or co-championships? I think not. Is it in 2 Heisman Trophy winners and the only one ever to bag 2 of them, as deeply as he loved these guys? I think not. Or is it in scrambled yard markers and dissembled coaches' caps, stomped watches, frazzled referees, and 5 seconds of miscue at the 1978 Gator Bowl? I think not. The value of the life of Woody Hayes is best personified in the rhetoric question of the prophet Micah, who said, "He has showed you, O man, what is good." And what does God require of you? But to do justice, to love kindness, and to walk humbly with your God. Those are the duties of a man in the middle. And in spite of all the press releases to the contrary, that's where Woody Hayes spent the majority of his time. Doing justice, loving kindness, and yes, walking humbly with his God. We're going to miss him. Still, those of us with confidence in the Word have another image in our mind this afternoon. Somewhere there's another mill pond, and beside it are 2 guys who haven't seen each other for 32 years. And they're catching up on old times, and they're tossing rocks, and they're talking, as the president said, of the splendor of the day when evening comes. And between them, they are claiming our future. Amen.